My name is Evelyn Reed, and I'm 34 years old. For most of my life, I've tried to live quietly, to be a good person, a loving mother, and a responsible neighbor. I thought I was succeeding. My world was small, but it was mine, and it was peaceful. Until my neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, decided to set it on fire. She called Child Protective Services on me, accusing me of being an unfit mother, a horrifying lie that threatened to tear my family apart. What she didn't know was that the thorough investigation she triggered wouldn't find anything in my house. What it found, instead, was a secret that lived right beneath her own feet. The raid happened at 6 a.m., and it changed everything. If you've ever had someone try to sabotage your life, to weaponize an accusation against you just because they could, then you know the ice-cold dread that seized my heart. It's a violation, a deep, personal attack that makes you question your sanity, your actions, and your place in the world. So, if this story resonates with you, or if you've had to fight for your truth against a relentless accuser, please hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel for more stories of overcoming unimaginable challenges, and let me know where you're watching or listening from in the comments below. Your strength inspires me. My life before Mrs. Henderson's insidious accusation was, to put it simply, full. Full of love, full of quiet routines, full of the joyful chaos that comes with raising a spirited child. I lived in a charming, slightly aged bungalow in the Oakwood Heights neighborhood, a cozy corner of the city known for its mature trees and friendly, if sometimes overly curious, residents. Our house, with its vibrant blue door and meticulously tended flower boxes, felt like a true home. It was a place where laughter echoed and where every creak of the old floorboards told a story. I'd bought it 7 years ago, a fixer-upper that I had slowly, lovingly transformed with my own 2 hands, painting walls, sanding floors, and coaxing life back into the neglected garden. My job was demanding, but deeply rewarding. I worked as a senior graphic designer for a local marketing agency, Innovate Design. My days were a whirlwind of client meetings, brainstorming sessions, and long hours hunched over my Wacom tablet, bringing ideas to life. I specialized in branding, crafting visual identities for small businesses, from artisanal bakeries to boutique yoga studios. A typical workday involved arriving at the office by 8:30 a.m., coffee in hand, to dive into my project queue. I loved the creative challenge, the satisfaction of seeing a client's vision materialize through my designs. My boss, a genial but exacting man named Mark, often praised my eye for detail and unwavering commitment. I aimed to become a creative director within the next 5 years, a goal that required immense dedication and a knack for staying ahead of industry trends. There were days when I'd work late, fueled by takeout and a boundless supply of caffeine, but I never resented it. It was my passion, my way of building a secure future for my daughter. My financial situation was stable, comfortable, but not lavish. I was a single mom, and every dollar was carefully accounted for. My graphic design salary provided enough to cover the mortgage, utilities, Lily's school expenses, and the occasional treat, with a modest amount left over for savings. I was diligent about budgeting, tracking every expense in a worn-out notebook. My hobbies were simple: gardening, an escape that allowed me to get my hands dirty and connect with nature, and occasionally, a quiet evening spent with a good book and a cup of herbal tea. I rarely went out, preferring the comfort of my home and the company of my daughter. My social circle was small but fiercely loyal. My best friend, Sarah, was a whirlwind of energy and optimism, a fellow single mom who understood the unique challenges and joys of our lives. We'd meet for coffee every other Saturday morning, trading stories about our kids and offering each other a much-needed dose of adult conversation and solidarity. We also had a small group of other moms from Lily's school who formed a supportive, informal network, always there for a carpool, a last-minute babysitting swap, or simply a sympathetic ear. My love life, for the past 7 years, had been non-existent. My focus was entirely on Lily and my career. There simply wasn't enough time or emotional bandwidth for anything else, and I was content with that. Mornings in our house were a symphony of cheerful chaos. My alarm would go off at 6 a.m., and I'd sneak out of bed, careful not to wake Lily. After a quick shower, I'd head to the kitchen to prepare her breakfast, usually scrambled eggs and fruit, and pack her lunch. At 6:45, I'd gently wake Lily, whose initial grogginess would quickly give way to excited chatter about her day ahead. Lily was a bright, curious 7-year-old with a cascade of fiery red hair and a smile that could melt glaciers. We'd eat breakfast together, discussing her dreams from the night before or the adventures she planned for her stuffed animals. By 7:30, we'd be out the door, walking hand in hand to Willow Creek Elementary, just 3 blocks away. I cherished those morning walks, the quiet moments of connection before the hustle of the day consumed us. After dropping her off, I'd walk back home, grab my work bag, and drive to the office, usually arriving a little before my official start time. Workdays were structured, but often unpredictable. One day, I might be immersed in creating a new logo from scratch, iterating through dozens of design concepts. The next, I might be presenting a full branding strategy to a demanding client, carefully explaining my choices and responding to feedback. Lunch was usually a quick salad at my desk, catching up on industry news or checking in on Lily's school portal. Afternoons were often reserved for collaborative projects with other designers or for refining existing designs based on client revisions. The creative energy in the office was palpable, a constant hum of ideas and innovation. Evenings were my favorite. I'd leave work promptly at 5 p.m., eager to pick up Lily from her after-school program. Our walk home was usually filled with her animated recounting of her day, what she learned, who she played with, the latest classroom drama. Back at home, we'd spend an hour doing homework, then I'd prepare dinner, usually something simple and healthy. After dinner, it was bath time, then story time, a cherished ritual where I'd read aloud from her favorite books, losing myself in fantastical worlds alongside her. By 8:30 p.m., she'd be tucked into bed, and I'd finally have a few hours to myself. This was when I'd tackle household chores, catch up on emails, or indulge in my gardening magazines, planning my next floral conquest. By 10 p.m., utterly exhausted but deeply content, I'd crawl into bed, ready to do it all again. It was a simple, repetitive life, but it was my life, and I loved every predictable, loving moment of it. My family, as I mentioned, was just Lily and me. My parents lived 2 states away, in a quiet retirement community in Arizona, enjoying their golden years. We spoke on the phone weekly, exchanging updates and warm wishes, but their physical presence in our day-to-day lives was limited. My father, Robert, was a retired engineer, a man of few words but immense wisdom, with a dry wit that always made me smile. My mother, Clara, was a former librarian, gentle and artistic, who encouraged my creative inclinations from a young age. Their absence, while sometimes felt, was compensated by their unwavering emotional support. Lily, my 7-year-old daughter, was the sun around which my world revolved. She was a whirlwind of fiery red hair, sparkling blue eyes, and an insatiable curiosity. Her personality was a vibrant blend of fierce independence and tender affection. She loved to draw, to build towering Lego castles, and to read stories about dragons and brave princesses. She was the reason I worked so hard, the reason I meticulously planned our future, and the reason my heart felt full, even on the most challenging days. Our family dynamic was straightforward. I was the primary caregiver, the provider, the disciplinarian, and the chief comforter. Lily, in turn, was my constant companion, my little shadow, and the source of boundless joy and occasional exasperation. We were a team, a duo navigating the world together, our bond forged in shared experiences and unconditional love. Our traditions were built around simple pleasures, Friday night pizza and movie nights, where Lily got to choose the film and I supplied the popcorn. Sunday mornings were for making pancakes from scratch, a messy but beloved ritual. Holidays were spent decorating our small home with handmade crafts and baking cookies, filling the air with the scent of cinnamon and nutmeg. Communication was open and honest, tailored to Lily's age, of course. We talked about everything, from her fears about monsters under the bed to my own frustrations at work, simplified, of course. Decision-making was collaborative where appropriate. Lily had a say in her clothes, her activities, and what we watched on movie night, fostering a sense of agency and importance. We were a tight-knit unit, a small but powerful force in our own little world. Then there was Mrs. Henderson, my next-door neighbor. Her name was Agnes, and she was a woman in her late 60s, with a perpetually sour expression, eyes that seemed to miss nothing, and a shock of perfectly coiffed, unnaturally black hair. She lived alone in a house that was impeccably maintained, its lawn always manicured, its windows always sparkling. Her house stood in stark contrast to ours. Ours was lived in and colorful, hers was pristine and frankly a bit sterile. She seemed to embody the stereotype of the nosy, judgmental neighbor. She rarely smiled, and when she did, it felt more like a grimace than a genuine expression of warmth. Her interactions with me were always brief and clipped, usually involving complaints about Lily's laughter being too loud, or the rustling of leaves from our oak tree falling onto her perfectly swept patio. Mrs. Henderson seemed to exist in a different orbit than the rest of the neighborhood. While other neighbors exchanged pleasantries, offered a helping hand, or shared a cup of sugar, Mrs. Henderson remained aloof, a watchful sentinel behind her pristine lace curtains. Her family life seemed to be a mystery. I never saw visitors, never heard sounds of gathering, which only added to her enigmatic, slightly unsettling aura. General consensus among the other neighbors was that she was a bit peculiar, but largely harmless, if a little bothersome with her constant observations. My relationship with her was, at best, a polite nod across the fence, and at worst, a terse exchange about a stray ball of lilies that had dared to land on her lawn. There was a constant, low-level hum of tension, an unspoken judgment in her eyes whenever she looked at my vibrant blue door, my slightly wild garden, or Lily's unrestrained joy. My history with judgmental figures, or rather, my history of simply trying to live my life authentically and encountering those who disapproved, wasn't new. It was a recurring theme that, in hindsight, prepared me for Mrs. Henderson's ultimate accusation. When I first became a single mother, still young and navigating the complexities of newfound independence and immense responsibility, I faced a lot of unspoken judgment. I remember one specific instance at Lily's first parent-teacher conference in kindergarten. Mrs. Albright, Lily's teacher at the time, a woman with a severe bun and an even severe gaze, had looked at me with a condescending pity that made my skin crawl. "It's so important for children to have a stable home environment. Evelyn," she'd said, her tone dripping with passive aggression, clearly implying my single-parent household was inherently unstable. I remember feeling a hot flush of anger, but I swallowed it, determined to prove her wrong through my actions, not my words. I worked tirelessly to ensure Lily had everything she needed, creating a stable, loving home despite the challenging circumstances. This incident, among others, taught me to build a thick skin, to prioritize my daughter's well-being above external opinions, and to trust my own judgment as a mother. There had also been a minor but illustrative conflict with a previous neighbor in my old apartment complex. Mr. Davies, an elderly gentleman who lived below me, complained endlessly about Lily's excessive noise. The sound of her playing, running, or simply dropping a toy on the floor. He would bang on his ceiling, leave passive-aggressive notes on my door, and even accost me in the hallway with sharp accusations about my parenting. "Children need to be disciplined, young lady," he'd snapped one day, as Lily and I were walking to the park. "Your daughter is running wild." I tried to reason with him, to explain that children make noise, that I was doing my best, but he was intractable. The constant criticism chipped away at my confidence, making me second-guess every decision, every moment of Lily's innocent play. It wasn't until I moved into my bungalow, escaping that constant scrutiny, that I truly understood the mental toll such continuous judgment could take. This experience, however, taught me the importance of setting boundaries, of not internalizing someone else's negativity, and of recognizing when a situation was toxic enough to warrant removal. With Mrs. Henderson, the conflict was less about noise and more about an overarching sense of disapproval. From the moment I moved in, I felt her eyes on me. She'd often be watering her plants at the exact moment I was leaving for work, her gaze lingering a little too long on my car, on Lily, on me. I remember one particularly warm summer evening when Lily and I were having a water balloon fight in our backyard, our laughter echoing through the air. It was pure, unadulterated joy. Suddenly, Mrs. Henderson's pristine white fence parted slightly, and her head poked through, her face a mask of severe displeasure. "Must you be so boisterous, Evelyn?" she called out, her voice cutting through our fun. "Some of us prefer a bit of peace and quiet in the evenings." Lily immediately deflated, her bright smile fading, and I had to work hard to reignite her playful spirit while internally seething at Mrs. Henderson's audacity. It was a subtle, but continuous undermining of my attempts to create a joyful, normal childhood for Lily. Another time, after a particularly challenging week at work, I had opted for takeout pizza and a movie night for Lily and me instead of a home-cooked meal. As I carried the pizza box through the front door, Mrs. Henderson, who happened to be meticulously sweeping her already spotless porch, stopped her activity. "Convenience food again, Evelyn," she remarked, her tone laden with judgment. "It's a shame children nowadays aren't taught the value of a proper, nutritious meal." I just smiled, forced a polite, "Good evening, Agnes," and hurried inside, my cheeks burning with indignation. Each of these small instances, these microaggressions, chipped away at my sense of peace, making me feel like I was constantly under surveillance, constantly being found wanting. These experiences, however, solidified my resolve. They taught me to trust my instincts, to fiercely protect my daughter, and to rely on my own moral compass, rather than succumbing to the pressures of external judgment. I learned that some people simply look for flaws, and that their criticism often says more about them than it does about you. I developed a quiet resilience, a steely determination to prove my worth not to my detractors, but to myself and to Lily. I knew I was a good mother, a responsible individual, and that was all that truly mattered. This deep-seated conviction would be my anchor when Mrs. Henderson's final, most devastating accusation hit. The weeks leading up to the CPS call were filled with a creeping sense of unease. Mrs. Henderson's watchful gaze intensified, becoming less an annoyance and more a palpable presence. Her curtains seemed to be perpetually parted, her eyes darting whenever Lily and I stepped outside. I'd catch glimpses of her, a fleeting shadow behind the lace, and an involuntary shiver would run down my spine. It felt less like neighborly curiosity and more like active surveillance. The small conflicts, which had once been sporadic, became more frequent and pointed. One Tuesday afternoon, after a particularly windy storm, a few branches from our old oak tree had fallen into Mrs. Henderson's meticulously maintained yard. Before I even had a chance to grab my rake, she was at my door, her face a thundercloud. "Evelyn, your tree is a menace," she snapped, jabbing a bony finger towards the offending debris. "You need to prune that thing before it causes real damage. And you'd better clean up these branches immediately." Her tone was accusatory, demanding, completely disproportionate to the minor inconvenience. I apologized, promised to take care of it, and worked quickly to clear the branches, but her aggressive demeanor left a bitter taste in my mouth. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was actively looking for things to complain about. Another incident happened a few days later. Lily, excited about a drawing she'd made at school, had taped it to the inside of our front window, a colorful depiction of a rainbow-maned horse. Later that evening, my doorbell rang persistently. It was Mrs. Henderson, holding a small, crumpled flyer in her hand. "Evelyn, do you know about the neighborhood covenants?" she asked, her voice tight with barely suppressed anger. Item 7, Section B clearly states that no exterior decorations or signage may be displayed without prior Architectural Review Committee approval. This includes things visible through windows. She gestured pointedly at Lily's drawing. "It detracts from the aesthetic of the street. It's simply not acceptable." I stared at her, dumbfounded. A child's drawing. This was beyond petty. It was malicious. I tried to rationalize it, to tell myself she was just eccentric, overly concerned with order, but a cold dread began to coil in my stomach. She was escalating. I confided in Sarah, my best friend, over our Saturday coffee. "It's getting worse, Sarah," I said, stirring my latte absently. "Mrs. Henderson is actively trying to make my life miserable. It's like she has a personal vendetta against me for existing." Sarah, always practical, suggested I document everything. "Start a log, Ev, dates, times, what she says, just in case." I took her advice, purchasing a small notebook and dutifully jotting down every minor interaction, every glint of her watchful eye, every passive-aggressive comment. I tried to rationalize her behavior. Maybe she's lonely. Maybe she's just a stickler for rules. Maybe she has nothing better to do. but deep down, a more sinister suspicion was growing. It felt like she was building a case, meticulously gathering what she perceived as evidence against me for some unknown purpose. The constant pressure, the feeling of being judged and observed, was exhausting, eroding my sense of peace in my own home. I felt like I was constantly walking on eggshells, even in my own backyard, desperate not to give her any ammunition. The week before the CPS call, the tension reached a fever pitch. Lily had a mild fever and I kept her home from school. I'd called out of work, canceling an important client meeting to be with her. Around lunchtime, as I was comforting Lily on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, watching a cartoon, there was a loud, aggressive knock at the door. It was Mrs. Henderson. "Evelyn," she began, her voice shrill, "I haven't seen your daughter leave for school today. Is she ill? Or are you simply allowing her to skip her education?" Her eyes narrowed, taking in Lily's flushed face on the couch. "It's a serious matter, truancy. Not to mention, if she's sick, she should be at the doctor, not lounging around watching television." My jaw dropped. Her audacity was breathtaking. "Mrs. Henderson," I said, my voice tight with barely suppressed fury, "Lily has a fever. I called the school and she's resting. It's none of your business." I slammed the door shut, my heart pounding. That night, I couldn't sleep. Her words, her invasive behavior, felt like a direct threat. I had a terrifying premonition that something much worse was coming. The morning of the CPS visit started like any other Tuesday. I dropped Lily off at school, come home, and settled into my makeshift home office, a corner of my dining room, to catch up on some freelance work before my official workday began at the agency. I was immersed in a new logo design, the scent of fresh coffee filling the air, when a sharp, insistent knock rattled my front door. It wasn't the polite tap of a delivery person, nor the familiar, friendly knock of a neighbor. It was firm, official, and unsettling. I opened the door to find two people standing on my porch. One was a tall, stern-looking woman in a severe pantsuit, her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun, her eyes scanning my face with an unnerving intensity. The other was a younger man, slightly softer in appearance, holding a clipboard. Both wore expressions of detached professionalism. "Ms. Evelyn Reed?" the woman asked, her voice flat, devoid of warmth. "Yes, that's me," I replied, my heart giving a sudden panicked lurch. "Can I help you?" "We're from Child Protective Services," she stated, flashing an official badge. "My name is Agent Miller, and this is Agent Davis. We've received a report concerning the welfare of your daughter, Lily Reed." The words hit me like a physical blow, a cold, sickening wave washing over me. Child Protective Services, welfare report. Lily, my mind reeled, trying to process, to comprehend. "What?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. My hands started to tremble, a frantic tremor that spread through my entire body. "Welfare report? What are you talking about? Lily is perfectly fine. I'm a good mother." Agent Miller's expression remained impassive. "Ms. Reed, we have received an anonymous complaint alleging neglect and an unsafe home environment. We need to come inside and conduct an investigation." Anonymous complaint, unsafe home environment, neglect. My blood ran cold. My gaze instinctively darted to Mrs. Henderson's house next door, her lace curtains shifting almost imperceptibly. A knot of ice formed in my stomach, solidifying the terrifying suspicion that had been growing for weeks. It was her. It had to be her. "An unsafe home environment?" I repeated, my voice rising in disbelief and indignation. "My home is perfectly safe. My daughter is loved and cared for. This is a complete fabrication." Despite my protests, their faces remained unyielding. There was no room for argument, no space for defense. "Ms. Reed, if you refuse to cooperate, we will have to obtain a court order," Agent Miller said, her tone firm, leaving no doubt about the severity of the situation. I felt trapped, cornered. The thought of them getting a court order, of this nightmare escalating, was unbearable. I took a shaky breath, trying to regain some semblance of composure. My mind was racing, a chaotic storm of fear, anger, and utter confusion. What could she have possibly said? What lie did she concoct? "Fine," I choked out, stepping aside, my body rigid with tension. "Come in, but this is completely unnecessary, and I want to know who made this complaint." Agent Miller ignored my question, her eyes already sweeping the living room as she stepped inside, followed by Agent Davis. The air in my usually warm and inviting home suddenly felt sterile and hostile, invaded by their professional detachment. Every object, every piece of furniture, every crayon drawing taped to the refrigerator felt like it was under scrutiny, being judged, being found wanting. "We'll need to see all areas of the house, Ms. Reed," Agent Miller announced, her gaze unwavering. "And we'll need to speak with your daughter." My stomach clenched. Lily. The thought of them questioning Lily, of exposing her to this horrifying ordeal, sent a fresh wave of panic through me. "Lily's at school right now," I managed to say, my voice hoarse. "Please don't involve her. This is between you and me. I can assure you there's nothing wrong here." "That will not be possible," Agent Davis stated, his voice softer than Agent Miller's, but just as firm. "We need to assess the child's living conditions and speak with her directly. We'll be going to the school after we complete our inspection here." I felt a dizzying surge of nausea. My beautiful, innocent Lily, subjected to this invasive questioning, all because of my hateful neighbor's lies. I watched, paralyzed, as Agent Miller moved through my living room, her eyes meticulously cataloging every detail. She ran a gloved finger along a bookshelf, inspecting for dust. She peered into Lily's toy basket, examining the contents. Agent Davis, meanwhile, was jotting down notes on his clipboard, his pen scratching rhythmically, each stroke a mark against my record. They moved to the kitchen, opening cabinets, checking the refrigerator's contents, scrutinizing the expiration dates on food items. They even looked under the sink, presumably for cleaning supplies accessible to a child. My humiliation was absolute. My home, my sanctuary, was being treated like a crime scene. I stood there, arms crossed, trying to project an air of calm I was far from feeling, my mind screaming in silent protest. When they entered Lily's bedroom, my heart ached. Her colorful drawings adorned the walls, her beloved stuffed animals sat neatly on her bed. Agent Miller moved through the room with the same detached thoroughness, checking the windows, the closet, even running her hand over Lily's neatly made bed. "Are there any locks on her bedroom door from the outside?" she asked, her gaze fixed on me. "No," I replied, my voice flat. "Why would there be?" She just nodded, making another note. The inspection seemed to drag on for an eternity, each minute stretching into an hour of excruciating scrutiny. My initial shock slowly gave way to a simmering anger, a cold fury at the injustice of it all. How dare she? How dare Mrs. Henderson fabricate such monstrous lies? How dare these people invade my home, question my competence as a mother, based on an anonymous, malicious tip? Finally, they concluded their physical inspection. "We will now proceed to Willow Creek Elementary to speak with Lily Reed," Agent Miller announced. "We will also be conducting interviews with her teachers and any other relevant parties. We will be in touch with our findings, Ms. Reed." She handed me a pamphlet outlining my rights and their procedures, a useless piece of paper in my trembling hands. As they walked out the door, Agent Miller paused, her gaze once again sweeping my porch, my colorful flower boxes. "We take all complaints seriously, Ms. Reed. We will determine the validity of the allegations." And then they were gone, leaving behind an echoing silence, a feeling of profound violation and a gaping wound in my sense of security. I slammed the door shut, leaned against it, and burst into uncontrollable sobs, the tears hot and bitter on my face. My home felt tainted, my spirit bruised beyond measure. The weight of betrayal was crushing. The hours immediately following the CPS visit were a blur of raw emotion and frantic action. My entire body felt like it was vibrating with residual shock and a cold, creeping dread. My stomach churned, and a pounding headache had taken root behind my eyes. I felt nauseous, physically ill with the realization of what had just happened. My home, my safe haven, had been violated. My competence as a mother questioned by strangers who had no idea of the love and dedication I poured into Lily's life. My first coherent action was to call Sarah. Her phone rang several times before she answered, her voice cheerful, unaware of the earthquake that had just rattled my world. "Hey, Ev, what's up?" "Sarah," I choked out, my voice thick with tears. "CPS was just here. They investigated my house. They're going to talk to Lily at school." The words tumbled out, a frantic, disjointed explanation of the agent's visit, Mrs. Henderson's probable involvement, and my utter devastation. Sarah was immediately horrified. Oh my God, Ev, that's insane. Who would do something like that? I could hear the anger rising in her voice. It has to be Mrs. Henderson, doesn't it? She didn't wait for my answer. Okay, breathe. What do you need? Did they say anything specific? Are you okay? Her calm, practical tone was a lifeline. They said neglect, unsafe environment, I whispered, rubbing my temples. I don't know what to do. They're going to talk to Lily. I can't let her be scared. No, you absolutely can't, Sarah affirmed. First, don't talk to Mrs. Henderson, not a word. Don't engage. Second, I'm coming over. And then we're calling your parents, and then we're calling a lawyer. This is defamation, Evelyn. This is serious. Within 20 minutes, Sarah was at my door, a strong, comforting presence. She immediately brewed me a cup of chamomile tea, her calm efficiency a balm to my frayed nerves. I tried to go about my day, to do my freelance work, but my mind was a chaotic mess. Every shadow in the house seemed to hold a lurking threat. Every outside noise made me jump. I kept replaying Agent Miller's stern face, her dismissive tone, the way she had looked at Lily's drawings. My heart ached for Lily, imagining her innocent face being questioned by strangers. How would she react? Would she be scared? Confused? Would she think she had done something wrong? The guilt, the helplessness was overwhelming. I felt like I had failed to protect her. That evening, when I picked Lily up from school, I was a wreck. I tried to appear normal, to smile, but my hands were shaking as I buckled her into the car. Lily, thankfully, seemed oblivious to the drama. Mommy, Miss Janice said I was a super helper today, she chirped, holding up a star sticker. My heart constricted. She was so innocent, so pure. How could anyone try to harm us? Later that night, after Lily was asleep, my mother, Clara, called, her voice tight with worry. Sarah had already spoken to her. Evelyn, honey, we're so sorry. This is just awful. Your father and I are here for whatever you need. We can come stay with you, anything. Their support was invaluable, but the distance felt immense. My mother, ever the gentle soul, was clearly distressed, her voice trembling. My father, typically stoic, sounded uncharacteristically agitated. We need to get to the bottom of this, Evelyn. We can't let this woman get away with it. My first attempt at confronting Mrs. Henderson, despite Sarah's advice, came 2 days after the CPS visit. I was consumed by a burning need for answers, for an explanation, for some semblance of sanity in this nightmare. I saw her meticulously pruning her rose bushes, her back to me. I walked over, my fists clenched, every nerve ending buzzing with adrenaline. Mrs. Henderson, I began, my voice tight with barely suppressed fury. She slowly turned, her pruning shears held casually, her expression unreadable. Yes, Evelyn. You called CPS on me, didn't you? I accused, my voice trembling. You told them I was an unfit mother, that my home was unsafe. Why would you do something so monstrous? Her face, usually so impassive, contorted into a mask of feigned innocence. Evelyn, I have no idea what you're talking about. I merely observe. I'm a concerned citizen. If I see something untoward, I believe it's my civic duty to report it. Anonymous, of course. Her eyes glinted with a cruel satisfaction. Perhaps if you were a better mother, these agencies wouldn't be investigating you. The gaslighting was masterful, infuriating. She wasn't denying it, she was twisting it, implying that I was indeed at fault, that her concerns were legitimate. Untoward? What exactly did you see that was untoward, Agnes? Lily having a water balloon fight, me ordering pizza, her having a fever. What? My voice rose, raw with emotion. She just smirked, a thin, humorless line. A mother's duties are extensive, Evelyn. Perhaps you simply aren't up to the task. Some women, well, they're simply not meant for motherhood. She turned her back to me, resuming her pruning, a clear dismissal. I stood there, shaking with impotent rage, the words echoing in my ears, cutting me to the core. She truly believed I was an unfit mother, or at least she wanted others to believe it. The confrontation had been a spectacular failure, leaving me even more enraged and demoralized. A week later, the social worker, Agent Davis, called to schedule a follow-up interview. He also informed me that they had indeed spoken with Lily at school, and with her teacher, Miss Evans. Everything seems fine at school, Ms. Reed, he said, his tone reassuring. Miss Evans spoke very highly of Lily and your involvement, and Lily seemed happy and well-adjusted. A small spark of hope ignited in my chest. But then he added, however, we still need to complete our investigation into the home environment. We've received some additional details about potential hazards in the basement. Basement hazards. My basement was mostly unfinished, used for storage, and perfectly safe. I certainly didn't have any hazards there. Another lie from Mrs. Henderson. My frustration was growing, deepening with each new, fabricated accusation. The investigation itself was a harrowing process. Agent Davis conducted a second, even more thorough inspection of my home, focusing on every nook and cranny, every potential hazard. He even brought a checklist, meticulously marking off items like accessible cleaning supplies, functioning smoke detectors, and safe stairway access. It felt like an inquisition, a constant reaffirmation that I was presumed guilty until proven innocent. He did, however, seem more open, more empathetic than Agent Miller. He noticed Lily's drawings, the homemade cookies on the counter, the well-worn children's books. He asked detailed questions about my daily routine, Lily's diet, her bedtime rituals. I answered honestly, openly, leaving no detail unshared, determined to paint a complete and accurate picture of our loving home. He also interviewed several of my other neighbors. Mrs. Chen, who lived across the street and often saw Lily and me playing in the yard, spoke glowingly of my parenting. Mr. Harrison, an elderly gentleman 2 doors down, recounted how I had helped him carry his groceries in one rainy afternoon. Even Lily's teacher, Miss Evans, called to offer her support, expressing her shock at the allegations and vouching for my dedicated involvement in Lily's education. These small acts of kindness, these affirmations from my community, were crucial in keeping me from completely spiraling into despair. They reminded me that not everyone was Mrs. Henderson, that there were good people who saw my truth. The aha moment came not from the CPS investigation directly, but from an entirely unexpected source. One evening, about 3 weeks into the ongoing CPS investigation, I was doing laundry in my basement. Our old washing machine had been acting up, making a strange rattling sound, and I was trying to pinpoint the source. As I bent down to examine the machine, I noticed a faint but distinct chemical odor. It was unusual, certainly not something I recognized from any of my cleaning products. It was sharp, slightly acrid, and oddly metallic. I sniffed the air, trying to place it. It seemed to be coming from the direction of the shared wall between my basement and Mrs. Henderson's. A chill ran down my spine. I remembered Agent Davis's comment about potential hazards in the basement. Was Mrs. Henderson lying about my basement, or was there something actually happening in her basement? The thought, once planted, began to grow, twisting and turning in my mind like a noxious vine. I remembered the odd hours I sometimes saw Mrs. Henderson moving around, late at night, the occasional whirring sound I'd sometimes hear, muffled from her side of the house. I had dismissed them as her just being peculiar. But combined with the strange chemical smell, a more sinister possibility began to form. My initial reaction was disbelief. No, it can't be. Not Agnes. She's just a judgmental old woman. But the pieces were starting to click into place, forming a terrifying mosaic. Her extreme secrecy, her lack of visitors, the inexplicable wealth despite no visible employment, her obsessive focus on my unsuitability as a mother. It suddenly looked less like mere busybody behavior and more like a carefully constructed smokescreen. She was trying to draw attention away from herself by shining a spotlight of suspicion on me. My heart pounded with a mix of fear and a chilling sense of dawning realization. This wasn't just about a malicious neighbor. This was about something far more dangerous. The weeks that followed the discovery of the chemical odor were a tense dance between extreme caution and growing determination. I knew, with a gut certainty, that Mrs. Henderson's basement held a secret far darker than any cosmetic issues she found in my life. The thought of a drug lab next door, directly adjacent to my daughter's bedroom, was terrifying. But the knowledge also fueled a cold, quiet resolve. I wasn't just fighting to clear my name anymore. I was fighting to protect Lily from a very real, tangible threat. My mental and emotional preparation for the inevitable confrontation was meticulous. I ceased all direct contact with Mrs. Henderson, offering only curt nods if our paths absolutely crossed. I became hypervigilant, documenting every subtle sound, every fleeting smell from her side of the house in my little notebook. I researched online, looking up common smells associated with different types of illegal drug production, and the acrid, chemical scent I detected matched several descriptions. My strategy was clear. I needed to gather enough credible information to bring to the authorities, not just as a desperate mother, but as a concerned citizen with objective observations. My goal was not just to clear my name with CPS, but to expose Mrs. Henderson and ensure she faced the full consequences of her actions. I wanted justice, not just vindication. My allies in this phase were, unexpectedly, Agent Davis from CPS and my best friend, Sarah. Agent Davis, during our continued follow-up calls, had developed a more sympathetic ear. He had spoken to Lily, to her teacher, to other neighbors, and his tone clearly indicated he was finding no evidence to support Mrs. Henderson's claims. One afternoon, when he called to update me, I cautiously brought up my suspicions. "Agent Davis," I said, my voice low and steady, "I appreciate your thoroughness. I've been thinking about what might be behind these false accusations, and I've noticed something concerning about my neighbor, Mrs. Henderson." I described the strange chemical smell, the late-night activity, the unusual secrecy. He listened intently, his usual professional detachment replaced by a keen interest. "That's very interesting, Ms. Reed," he said, after a long pause. "We often see cases where false reports are made to deflect attention from illicit activities within the accuser's own home." He advised me to continue documenting everything, and assured me that CPS had a protocol for sharing such information with law enforcement if it became relevant. Sarah, of course, was my confidant and emotional anchor. I shared my theory with her, and she reacted with a mix of horror and fierce protectiveness. "That manipulative witch," she exclaimed, her eyes wide. "She tried to ruin your life to hide her own crimes. We have to get her." Sarah helped me organize my notes, cross-reference information, and mentally rehearse how I would present my case to the police. She reminded me of my courage, of my strength, and of the unwavering love for Lily that was driving me. My fear for Lily was a constant companion, but it was also the fuel for my absolute resolve. I rehearsed my conversations with the police, anticipating their questions, preparing to present my observations calmly and logically. I needed to be seen as a credible witness, not a hysterical, accused mother. The day I finally went to the police station felt like stepping onto a battlefield. I brought my notebook, filled with dates, times, smells, and observations. I spoke with a Detective Ramirez, a no-nonsense woman with kind, intelligent eyes. I laid out my story, from Mrs. Henderson's initial hostility to the CPS call to my recent discovery of the chemical odor. I stressed the timing of the CPS call, how it had coincided with my growing unease about Mrs. Henderson's unusual activities. Detective Ramirez listened patiently, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she looked at me squarely. "Ms. Reed, we take all reports of potential drug activity very seriously, especially when a child's safety is involved. Your account, combined with the CPS investigation, gives us probable cause to investigate further." She assured me they would proceed discreetly, confirming that Agent Davis had already shared my initial concerns with their department. The wheels of justice, slow as they sometimes were, had begun to turn. The confrontation wasn't a shouting match in the street, nor a tense courtroom drama. It was the terrifying, yet profoundly vindicating, roar of official intervention at dawn. It was 6 a.m., a crisp Thursday morning, still shrouded in the pre-dawn gloom. I was awake, as usual, already dressed and preparing Lily's breakfast, the scent of scrambled eggs filling the kitchen. Lily was still asleep, tucked warmly in her bed. Suddenly, a blinding flash of blue and red light bathed my living room through the windows. The quiet hum of the morning was shattered by the guttural thrum of multiple engines and the unmistakable shouts of men. My heart leaped into my throat, a primal surge of adrenaline. I rushed to the front window, peering through the blinds. Outside, my quiet street was swarming with police cars, their flashing lights painting the scene in a surreal kaleidoscope. Uniformed officers, some with tactical gear, were swarming Mrs. Henderson's house. I saw Detective Ramirez among them, directing the operation with calm authority. Then came the boom. Not a gunshot, but the unmistakable sound of a battering ram hitting Mrs. Henderson's front door, followed by the splintering of wood. "Police! Search warrant!" a voice boomed, amplified by a megaphone. Mrs. Henderson's perfectly manicured lawn, the symbol of her rigid control, was now trampled by dozens of boots. Officers were moving quickly, systematically, surrounding the house, securing the perimeter. My breath hitched in my throat. This was it. The moment I had been anticipating, dreading, and silently praying for. A few minutes later, officers emerged from the front door, pulling a struggling, disheveled Mrs. Henderson. Her signature perfectly coiffed black hair was wild, her face pale with terror and outrage, her eyes wide and unfocused. She was shouting incoherent accusations, struggling against the officers who were cuffing her. "This is an outrage. You can't do this. I haven't done anything. It's her. It's Evelyn Reed. She's the problem." She shrieked, her voice cracking, her gaze darting towards my house, filled with a mixture of hatred and desperate, dying hope. My heart pounded, a mixture of fear and triumph. It was raw, unbridled vindication. My name was being cleared, not by my words alone, but by the irrefutable evidence found within her walls. The officers quickly ushered Mrs. Henderson into a patrol car. As they did, I saw a team of hazmat-suited individuals emerge from a specialized van, heading directly for Mrs. Henderson's basement door, which was located on the side of her house, usually kept meticulously locked and hidden behind a trellis of climbing roses. The distinct, acrid chemical smell I had detected weeks ago was now far stronger, assaulting my nostrils even from my own living room. It was undeniable. One of the officers, a burly man with a kind face, noticed me at my window. He gave me a brief, almost imperceptible nod, a silent acknowledgement of what was happening, of my role in bringing this to light. It was a moment of profound recognition. The raid continued for hours. Detectives were everywhere, meticulously documenting the scene. Crime scene tape went up, transforming Mrs. Henderson's pristine home into a chilling tableau of criminal activity. Neighbors, drawn by the commotion, began to emerge from their houses, their faces a mixture of shock, confusion, and dawning realization. I saw Mrs. Chen across the street, her eyes wide with disbelief, then turning to me, a look of profound apology and understanding in her gaze. Mr. Harrison, the elderly gentleman, stood on his porch, shaking his head, his face a mixture of sadness and quiet horror. As the sun fully rose, illuminating the scene, a large, industrial fan was brought in and positioned at the open basement door. The smell intensified briefly, then slowly began to dissipate as the ventilation system kicked in. The hazmat team moved in and out of the basement, carrying out sealed containers, equipment, and other materials. It was clear this wasn't just a small operation. A few hours later, Detective Ramirez walked over to my front porch, her expression tired but resolute. She gave me a small, approving smile. "Ms. Reed, thank you for your courage and your persistence. We found a fully operational methamphetamine lab in Mrs. Henderson's basement. It was quite extensive. It appears she was using the false CPS report to divert attention from her own activities. She likely hoped that by casting suspicion on you, she'd be able to operate with less scrutiny." A shiver ran down my spine. The sheer audacity, the cold calculation of her actions was breathtaking. "And Lily," I asked, my voice barely a whisper, was she ever in danger?" Detective Ramirez's expression softened. "Potentially, yes. The chemicals used in these operations are highly volatile, and the fumes can be dangerous. Your concern was absolutely justified, Ms. Reed. We're very lucky you came forward. You likely prevented a much worse tragedy." My internal celebration was a quiet roar. Not just because my name was cleared, not just because I was proven right, but because Lily was safe. The power dynamic had irrevocably shifted. Mrs. Henderson, the judgmental, self-righteous neighbor, was now a criminal, her carefully constructed facade shattered into a million pieces. And I, the unfit mother, was the one who had brought her down. It was a profound, deeply satisfying moment of triumph, a testament to the power of truth and the unwavering strength of a mother protecting her child. The immediate aftermath of the raid was a whirlwind of official procedures and neighborhood gossip. Mrs. Henderson, Agnes, was taken into custody on multiple felony charges, including manufacturing illegal substances, reckless endangerment, and obstruction of justice. Her house became a crime scene for days, cordoned off with bright yellow tape, a stark contrast to its former pristine appearance. Investigators meticulously processed the scene, removing all the evidence from her basement: the beakers, the chemicals, the heating elements, the bags of finished product. The sheer scale of the operation was staggering. The news spread like wildfire through Oakwood Heights, then beyond, picked up by local news channels. Mrs. Henderson, once a figure of quiet disapproval, became the subject of shocked whispers and horrified speculation. Her various attempts to salvage the situation, initially denying everything, then claiming she was forced into it, then trying to blame me again, were easily dismantled by the overwhelming evidence and her own erratic behavior. There was no escaping the truth. My firm establishment of boundaries was immediate and absolute. While I felt a surge of empowerment, I also recognized the need for closure and protection. I spoke with CPS again, providing them with Detective Ramirez's confirmation. Agent Davis, his face etched with concern and apology, confirmed that my case was immediately closed, with a formal apology from the agency for the distress caused. He also informed me that Mrs. Henderson's anonymous complaint had indeed alleged things like unhygienic living conditions, child neglect due to parental substance abuse, a cruel irony, and allowing the child to wander unsupervised. Every lie was revealed, every malicious accusation dismantled. The reactions from witnesses, from my neighbors, were varied but mostly supportive. Mrs. Chen came to my door later that day, her eyes filled with tears. "Evelyn, I am so sorry. I always thought Agnes was just particular. I never imagined. And I doubted you even for a moment, and I am so deeply sorry." Other neighbors offered similar apologies, expressing their shock and relief that I was proven innocent. The local parent community, once a quiet network, rallied around me, offering help with carpools, meals, and expressions of solidarity. There was a sense of collective outrage against Mrs. Henderson, and a renewed appreciation for the safety and quiet of our community. The school also took action. Principal Davies, a different Mr. Davies from my earlier story, thankfully, called me personally to apologize for the initial distress caused by the CPS visit and commended me for my courage. He offered Lily any counseling she might need, although she remained largely unaware of the extent of the drama, only knowing that Auntie Agnes was very sick and had to go away. The biggest immediate change in family dynamics was the profound strengthening of my bond with my own mother. Clara flew out to stay with us for a week, showering Lily with extra love and simply being there for me. My father, from afar, made daily calls, offering legal advice and unwavering support. Their pride in me, not just for clearing my name but for exposing a serious criminal, was palpable. My relationship with Sarah deepened even further. She became more than a friend, a true sister-in-arms. The sense of isolation I had felt during the early days of the accusation vanished, replaced by a feeling of being deeply connected and supported. The extended consequences of the raid on Mrs. Henderson were far-reaching and served as a lasting testament to the truth. She was denied bail and held without bond, deemed a flight risk and a danger to the community. Her preliminary hearing revealed the true extent of her operation. She had been manufacturing methamphetamine for years, distributing it through a small, local network. The volume of chemicals found in her basement suggested a sophisticated, if clandestine, lab. Her attempts to feign ignorance or blame others were futile against the mountain of evidence, including financial records showing large, unexplained deposits and purchases of precursor chemicals. Her defense attorney, a weary public defender, had little to work with. Ultimately, Mrs. Henderson pleaded guilty to several charges in exchange for a slightly reduced sentence, avoiding a lengthy and public trial. She received a substantial prison sentence, serving as a harsh deterrent to anyone else in the community contemplating such illicit activities. Her meticulously kept house, once the symbol of her rigid control, was deemed a hazardous waste site due to chemical contamination. It was eventually seized by the city, cleaned at taxpayer expense, and then sold at auction to cover a fraction of the costs. The once pristine facade stood as a grim reminder of the darkness that had festered beneath it. The community, having collectively reeled from the shock, slowly began to heal. There was a renewed sense of vigilance and neighborly connection. The peculiar neighbor was now a criminal, and the illusion of quiet suburban perfection was shattered, replaced by a more honest, if sometimes messy, reality. Unexpected positive outcomes for me were numerous. Beyond the obvious vindication, my standing in the community shifted dramatically. I was no longer just the single mom with the bright blue door. I was Evelyn, the courageous woman who uncovered a drug lab. People approached me with newfound respect, sharing their admiration for my strength and perseverance. My graphic design business, which had suffered a dip during the CPS ordeal due to my distraction, saw an unexpected surge in clients, many of whom specifically sought me out after hearing my story. They admired my integrity and wanted to work with someone so clearly principled. My relationship with Lily, though never truly strained, deepened. While she didn't fully grasp the criminality, she understood that her mommy had been very brave. She became even more secure in our bond, sensing the strength and protection I had fought for. My other relationships, particularly with Sarah and my parents, solidified into unshakable pillars of support. Sarah often joked, "We survived Agnes Henderson. We can survive anything." My parents, having witnessed my resilience from afar, expressed a renewed sense of pride and confidence in my ability to handle any challenge. The whole ordeal taught me that even in the darkest moments, true character shines through, and that genuine connections are forged in adversity. It also reaffirmed my belief that sometimes the greatest evils hide behind the most outwardly respectable facades. Life 6 to 12 months after Mrs. Henderson's downfall was, in a word, liberating. The weight that had unknowingly pressed down on me for so long had lifted, leaving me feeling lighter, more vibrant, and undeniably stronger. My home, once tainted by the shadow of unjust accusations, felt truly like my sanctuary again, filled with an even deeper sense of peace and security. Lily flourished, unburdened by the knowledge of her former neighbor's true nature, growing into an even more confident and joyful little girl. Her laughter, once a source of Mrs. Henderson's complaints, now rang out freely in our backyard, a beautiful testament to our hard-won peace. My career at Innovate Design took off. The increased client flow and my newfound confidence translated into tangible success. Mark, my boss, often cited my unwavering integrity and ability to perform under pressure as key factors in my recent promotions. I was eventually offered the role of creative director, a year ahead of my initial goal, a testament to my dedication and the unexpected strength I found through adversity. My work became even more fulfilling, fueled by a desire to create impactful and authentic brands. I also started taking on pro bono projects for local nonprofits, using my design skills to support causes related to child welfare and community safety, channeling my personal experience into meaningful action. My living situation, while still in my beloved bungalow, felt entirely different. The house next door, once Mrs. Henderson's pristine, sterile fortress, had been purchased by a young couple with 2 small children. Their laughter, the sounds of their kids playing in the yard, replaced the oppressive silence and watchful gaze. It was a beautiful, full-circle moment, turning a place of malice into a hub of new life and joy. Our neighborhood, too, had undergone a subtle but significant transformation. Neighbors were more connected, more open, shedding the polite distance that had once allowed Mrs. Henderson's secrets to fester. We started a monthly potluck, a casual gathering that fostered genuine community and mutual support. My mental health, once fragile under the constant scrutiny, had solidified into a profound sense of well-being. The anxiety that had plagued me during the CPS investigation completely dissipated. I learned to trust my instincts implicitly, to validate my own experiences, and to fiercely protect my inner peace. I no longer sought external approval, understanding that my worth was inherent, a truth that no amount of malicious gossip or false accusations could ever diminish. I began practicing yoga, finding a new form of mindfulness and a way to physically release any lingering tension. My social life expanded naturally as I met new people through work and community events, forging friendships based on genuine connection and shared values. I even cautiously re-entered the dating world, finding myself drawn to people who embodied kindness and integrity, rather than those who might have once appealed to a more insecure version of myself. My confidence in setting and maintaining healthy boundaries was absolute. I learned that saying no was an act of self-care, and that protecting my energy was crucial for my well-being and for Lily's. My personal growth since that terrifying period has been immense. The Evelyn who answered the door to CPS, trembling and heartbroken, feels like a distant memory. I'm now stronger, wiser, and infinitely more resilient. The experience taught me that true strength isn't about avoiding conflict, but about facing it head-on, even when you're terrified, and about trusting your own unwavering truth. If I could go back and tell my past self one thing, it would be, hold firm, Evelyn. You are enough. You are a good mother, and the truth will always, always prevail. Don't let anyone dim your light. I learned that appearances can be deceiving, that the most seemingly respectable facades can hide the darkest secrets. I learned that true family dynamics extend beyond blood, encompassing the chosen friends and community members who stand by you when everything crumbles. As for forgiveness, I've come to a place of acceptance, but not absolution. What Mrs. Henderson did was calculated and cruel, a profound act of betrayal. I don't forgive her, but I no longer carry the anger. It has transmuted into a powerful catalyst for my advocacy, a reminder of the importance of speaking up against injustice. Healing for me came from the vindication, from rebuilding my life on a stronger foundation, and from knowing that I protected my daughter. Moving forward means living authentically, fearlessly, and with a deep gratitude for the peace I've found. My story has, unexpectedly, become a beacon for others. I started a small online blog, sharing my experiences of navigating false accusations and finding strength in adversity. I received countless messages from people who had faced similar struggles, false reports to CPS, malicious neighbors, or simply feeling targeted by an authority figure. My story gave them courage, a sense of not being alone. I've been able to connect with other mothers who felt isolated and judged, offering them a listening ear and practical advice. The ripple effect of my courage reached far beyond my immediate community, inspiring strangers to stand up for themselves and to trust their own instincts. It showed me that even the most personal and painful experiences can be transformed into a source of collective strength and empowerment. So to everyone listening, I want to leave you with this. Your truth is your superpower. Don't let anyone, no matter how convincing or intimidating, make you doubt it. Trust your gut. Fight for your peace. And never, ever let someone else's lies define your worth. Your journey might be challenging, but the strength you find on the other side is immeasurable. Please, like this video, subscribe to our channel for more stories of triumph, and share your own experiences in the comments below. Let's create a community where every voice is heard and every act of courage is celebrated. Thank you for being here.